The bus stop stood silent, a weathered sentinel of hope and heartache, where a father's love defied the cruelty of time and uncertainty. Pedro Martinez had been waiting here for 7 endless days, his eyes never leaving the horizon. His heart, a storm of desperate love and unbreakable belief that his missing daughter would return. If you believe in the power of a parent's love, if you want to witness stories of incredible hope and unexpected reunions, please subscribe to our channel right now. Don't miss a single moment that might restore your faith in humanity. The Martinez family lived in a small, pale blue house at the edge of San Miguel, a tight-knit community where everyone knew each other's stories. Elena Martinez had disappeared on a Tuesday afternoon, a day that began like any other and ended like a nightmare that would never fully fade. Pedro worked as a mechanic, his hands permanently stained with engine grease and oil, calloused from years of fixing other people's problems while his own world was falling apart. Maria, his wife, was a part-time school administrator, her normally precise demeanor now shattered by the weight of their daughter's disappearance. Elena was 12, caught in that delicate space between childhood and adolescence. Bright, curious, with her mother's sharp eyes and her father's stubborn determination, she had been walking home from her school, a route she had taken countless times before. The school was only 3 blocks from their home, a journey she knew by heart. The first hours after her disappearance were a blur of panic and confusion. Pedro remembered every moment with painful clarity. Maria had called him at the auto repair shop, her voice a sharp edge of terror. Elena didn't come home, she had said. Those 5 words changed everything. Local police arrived quickly. Officer Ramirez, a veteran of the San Miguel Police Department, tried to keep things calm. Sometimes kids just wander off, he had said. A statement that felt like a knife to Pedro's heart. But this wasn't a simple case of a child losing track of time. Elena's backpack was found first discarded in an empty lot 2 blocks from their home, its contents scattered. A pink notebook with flowers on the cover, her favorite mechanical pencil, a half-eaten granola bar. Everything looked undisturbed, except for the sense of absence that hung in the air. The community rallied immediately. San Miguel was the kind of place where people looked out for each other. Within hours, search parties were organized. Volunteers combed through nearby fields, checked abandoned buildings, walked every street and alley. Pedro was at the center of it all, his mechanic's body fueled by adrenaline and desperate hope. Maria handled the bureaucratic side of the search. She contacted every local authority, created missing person flyers, managed the flow of information. Her administrative skills, typically used for managing school records, now became a lifeline in searching for her daughter. Social media became a battlefield of information and hope. Elena's photo, a bright smile, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing her school uniform, was shared thousands of times. Local news stations picked up the story. For a moment, it seemed like the entire world was looking for Elena Martinez. Pedro's world narrowed to a single purpose: finding his daughter. He took time off work, something he had never done in 15 years of working at the same auto repair shop. His boss, understanding the gravity of the situation, not only supported him, but joined the search efforts. Nights were the worst. Maria would sit by the phone hoping for a call. Pedro would walk the streets, checking every possible location. Their home became a command center of sorts, maps marked with search areas, timelines of Elena's last known movements, contact information for every possible lead. Local businesses became involved. The convenience store owner reviewed security footage. The school principal gathered information from students and teachers. Even the local church organized prayer groups, their candles a constant flame of hope in the growing darkness of uncertainty. As days passed, the initial burst of community support began to wane. Search parties became smaller, phone calls became less frequent, but Pedro and Maria refused to let hope die. They knew their daughter was out there. They could feel it. Officer Ramirez continued to investigate, though his initial dismissive attitude had been replaced by genuine concern. Something about Elena's disappearance didn't add up. No signs of struggle, no clear indication of foul play, but also no reasonable explanation for her vanishing. Pedro began to develop a routine. He would wake before dawn, prepare missing person flyers, check local bulletin boards, talk to anyone who would listen. Maria continued her methodical approach, logging every piece of information, following up on every potential lead. Their other children, Marcos, their older son, and Sofia, their youngest, were staying with Maria's parents. The grandparents tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the weight of Elena's absence was impossible to ignore. As the first week of Elena's disappearance came to a close, Pedro made a decision that would change everything. He would wait at the bus stop, the last place Elena had been seen. Day and night, he would wait, because somewhere, deep in his heart, he knew she would come back. Little did he know that the journey to find Elena was just beginning, a journey that would test the limits of love, hope, and human endurance. The investigation began to unravel like a complex tapestry, with threads of information both promising and frustrating. Officer Carlos Ramirez found himself diving deeper into Elena Martinez's disappearance, a case that seemed to defy traditional investigation methods. Initial interviews with Elena's classmates and teachers revealed a girl who was both extraordinary and ordinary. Smart, slightly introverted, with a close group of friends, but not someone who typically drew attention to herself. Her school records were impeccable, no disciplinary issues, consistent academic performance, engaged but not overly social. Lucia Martinez, Elena's favorite teacher, provided the most comprehensive initial insight. Alina was different, she told Ramirez during a lengthy interview, not in a way that made her stand out, but in a way that made her quietly remarkable. She was the kind of student who listened more than she spoke, who seemed to understand things beyond her years. School records showed no signs of bullying, no indication of personal conflicts. Elena's social media was carefully curated. School projects, family photos, occasional interactions with a small group of friends. Nothing suggested she would voluntarily run away. Ramirez began mapping Elena's typical routes. The path from school was straightforward, 3 blocks through a mixed residential and commercial area. Security cameras from local businesses became crucial pieces of the investigation. Each frame was scrutinized, each moment analyzed with microscopic attention. The first significant lead came from an unexpected source. Mr. Gonzalez, who owned a small convenience store near Elena's school, remembered something strange. There was a white van, he told Ramirez, his hands trembling slightly. It wasn't here every day, but I noticed it a few times in the week before Elena disappeared. Forensic sketch artists worked with Mr. Gonzalez to create a composite. The van was nondescript white, slightly dirty, no distinctive markings. The kind of vehicle that could blend into any neighborhood, disappear into the background of urban landscape. Pedro Martinez became an unexpected ally in the investigation. His mechanical skills proved useful in analyzing vehicle-related evidence. He understood engines, understood how vehicles worked, could spot inconsistencies that might escape other investigators. But Maria approached the investigation with her administrative precision. She created a comprehensive timeline, mapping every known movement of Elena, every potential interaction, every possible scenario. Her spreadsheets became a crucial tool for the investigation, revealing patterns that might have been missed. Marcos, Elena's older brother, provided unexpected insights. Teenagers, Ramirez discovered, lived in a world of digital connections that adults often overlooked. Marcos began quietly investigating through his own social networks. Careful not to alert his parents to his independent research, the Martinez family's background became a crucial area of investigation. Pedro's work as a mechanic, Maria's job in school administration, nothing suggested any extraordinary risks. They were a typical working-class family, respected in their community, with no known enemies or significant conflicts. Weeks of investigation revealed subtle, troubling details. Elena had been communicating with someone online in the weeks before her disappearance. Careful extraction of digital records showed carefully masked conversations, communication that suggested someone was grooming her, but with a sophistication that went beyond typical predatory behavior. Ramirez brought in specialized digital forensics experts. They discovered layers of communication that seemed almost too careful, too controlled. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to create a digital persona that could engage with Elena. The white van became an obsession. Traffic camera footage was reviewed, cross-referenced, analyzed. Its appearances seemed strategic, never in the same location, always in proximity to Elena's known routes, but never directly threatening. Pedro's mechanical expertise proved crucial. He began analyzing vehicle tracks found near the location where Elena's backpack was discovered. Subtle details, oil stains, tire impressions told a story that went beyond simple observation. Maria's professional network became an unexpected resource. Through her connections in the school system, she began gathering information about similar disappearances, looking for patterns that might have been overlooked. Marcos continued his quiet investigation. Teenage networks were complex, filled with information that official channels might miss. He discovered subtle digital breadcrumbs, conversations that hinted at something larger than a simple disappearance. As weeks turned into months, the investigation seemed to both progress and stall. Each new piece of information created more questions than answers. The white van, the carefully masked online communications, the absolute lack of traditional warning signs, everything suggested this was not a typical missing persons case. Pedro's resolve never wavered. He continued his vigil at the bus stop, a living testament to a father's love. Maria continued her methodical investigation, her administrative skills transforming into a weapon of determination. The Martinez family became a symbol of hope in San Miguel. Their refusal to give up, their united front in the face of uncertainty, inspired the community. Elena was not just a missing girl, she was a daughter, a sister, a part of a family that refused to let her go. Little did they know that the truth was far more complex than anyone could imagine. Elena's disappearance was not just a mystery to be solved, it was a story waiting to be understood. The breaking point came slowly, then all at once. Pedro Martinez's world had been fracturing for months, each passing day chipping away at his hope, his sanity, his very understanding of family and survival. Media attention, once a blessing, had become a suffocating presence. Local news outlets that had initially championed Elena's search now began to hint at darker possibilities. Speculation replaced facts. Headlines that once read community searches for missing girl now whispered darker narratives, no leads after months, hope fades. Maria watched her husband deteriorate. His mechanic's hands, once steady and precise, now shook constantly. He would spend hours staring at maps, at photos, at the smallest pieces of evidence. Their home became a museum of hope and covered with timelines, potential routes, faded photographs of Alina. Their other children suffered silently. Marcos, now 16, carried the weight of potential guilt. He had been the older brother who should have protected his sister. Sofia, just 8, didn't fully understand the absence but felt the heavy silence that had consumed their family. Extended family began to fracture. Pedro's brothers suggested it was time to move on, words that felt like betrayal. Maria's parents tried to be supportive, but their own hope was wearing thin. Community support, once overwhelming, had become a distant memory. The police investigation had stalled. Officer Ramirez continued to work the case, but resources were limited. Each passing month made the chances of finding Alina smaller. The white van remained a ghost witnessed but never fully captured. A shadow in the investigation. Financial pressures began to mount. Pedro had exhausted his savings, taken multiple loans. The auto repair shop where he had worked for years could no longer hold his position. Maria's part-time school administration job became their primary income, a stark contrast to their previous stability. That psychological toll became unbearable. Maria insisted Pedro see a therapist, a suggestion he initially rejected, but the weight of loss, the constant uncertainty, began to crack his resolve. Support groups for parents of missing children became both a lifeline and a nightmare. Stories of hope and devastating loss intertwined. Marcos discovered something that would change everything. Careful investigation of Elena's digital footprints revealed a series of encrypted messages. His technical skills, developed through years of gaming and computer exploration, allowed him to begin decrypting what seemed like carefully hidden communications. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A distant relative, working in digital forensics in Mexico City, offered to help analyze the encrypted messages. What they discovered was both promising and terrifying. Elena's online interactions suggested she had been communicating with someone who knew far too much about her, not a random predator, but someone with intimate knowledge of her daily routine, her family, her school. The sophistication of the communication suggested something beyond a typical online threat. Pedro's mental state deteriorated. He became obsessed with the bus stop, spending increasingly long hours waiting, watching, believing that Alina would return exactly as she had disappeared. Maria watched helplessly as her husband transformed from a strong, practical man to someone consumed by grief and hope. Community dynamics shifted. Whispers began suggestions that perhaps Alina had run away, that the Martinez family was holding on to a fantasy. These rumors, though unspoken to their faces, became an additional layer of pain. Therapy sessions revealed the depth of Pedro's psychological struggle. Years of being a provider, of fixing things, of solving problems, had been shattered by an investigation that defied resolution. Elena's disappearance represented every fear a parent could imagine. The complete loss of control, the inability to protect. Maria became the family's anchor. She managed finances, continued the search, supported their other children, and tried to keep Pedro from completely unraveling. Her administrative skills, once a professional asset, now became a survival mechanism. Sofia began to show signs of psychological stress. She would draw pictures of Alina, create elaborate stories about her sister's return. Her child's imagination became both a source of hope and profound sadness for the family. Marcos's digital investigation continued. He began to build a complex map of Elena's online interactions, discovering patterns that suggested a level of manipulation far more sophisticated than anyone had initially believed. The Martinez family stood at a precipice. Their hope was becoming a burden, their search a potential source of further psychological destruction, yet the alternative, giving up, was unimaginable. Officer Ramirez continued to work the case, increasingly convinced that Elena's disappearance was part of something larger. The white van, the encrypted messages, the carefully constructed digital interactions. Nothing about this case followed standard missing persons protocols. As another month passed, Pedro made a decision that would change everything. He would wait at the bus stop, day and night, believing that somehow, somewhere, Alina would find her way back to him. Little did he know that the truth was far closer than anyone could have imagined. Alina's story was about to take a turn that would challenge everything they believed about loss, hope, and the extraordinary lengths of a family's love. The bus stop became Pedro Martinez's entire universe, a weathered metal bench, surrounded by a small patch of struggling grass and a single flickering streetlight, transformed into a monument of hope and desperation. His routine was precise, almost ritualistic. Each morning, he would arrive before sunrise, thermos of coffee in hand, a worn photograph of Alina carefully tucked into his jacket pocket. He wore the same faded blue work jacket, the one with small oil stains from years of mechanical work, now becoming a symbol of his vigil. Neighbors began to notice. At first, they watched with a mixture of pity and respect. Maria would sometimes bring him fresh clothes, additional food, her own grief etched into every movement. The local community responded in subtle ways. A warm cup of coffee, left anonymously. A sandwich wrapped in paper. Small acts of kindness that spoke volumes. Officer Ramirez would check on Pedro regularly. "You don't have to do this," he would say, knowing full well that Pedro's response would always be the same. "This is where she was last seen. This is where she returned." The bus stop told a story of its own. Layers of forgotten men, gum stuck underneath the bench, faded advertisements, scratches and marks that spoke of countless journeys. Pedro began to know every inch of this small piece of urban landscape. He mapped its details like a cartographer of hope. Local businesses became unexpected supporters. The convenience store owner would bring him hot meals. The newspaper stand operator would share snippets of information, local rumors. Teenagers from the nearby high school began to leave messages of support, small notes. Tucked into the bench's crevices, Marcos continued his digital investigation, sharing occasional findings with his father. Encrypted messages, digital breadcrumbs that suggested Elena's disappearance was part of something larger. Pedro would study these with the same intensity he once applied to fixing engines, looking for the smallest clue, the tiniest connection. Maria managed the family's practical needs. She continued working, continued searching, continued believing. Their younger daughter, Sofia, would sometimes sit with Pedro, her small hands holding his. Understanding something profound about love and waiting, the changing seasons became Pedro's calendar. Summer's heat gave way to autumn's crisp mornings. Leaves would gather around the bench, then snow would blanket its metal frame. But Pedro remained constant. His vigil was a promise, a declaration of parental love that defied logic, time, and despair. Local media began to pick up the story again. Father's endless vigil became a symbol of hope in San Miguel. People would stop, take photographs, leave small tokens of support. The bus stop transformed from a simple piece of urban infrastructure to a shrine of hope. Scientific researchers became intrigued. Professors from nearby universities began studying Pedro's psychological resilience. How could a person maintain hope with such absolute certainty? What drove a parent to such extraordinary lengths? Marcos discovered something significant in his digital investigation. The encrypted messages suggested a complex network of communication. Elena hadn't simply disappeared. She had been carefully, methodically, isolated. Someone had been planning her removal with extraordinary precision. Sofia, now 9, developed a unique relationship with her father's vigil. She would draw pictures of Elena, create elaborate stories about her return. Her child's imagination became a source of both pain and hope for the family. The local police department, initially skeptical, began to take Pedro's continuous presence more seriously. Officer Ramirez recognized something extraordinary in Pedro's determination. This wasn't just grief, this was a form of active hope that defied traditional understanding. But winter brought its own challenges. Pedro would wrap himself in layers, use a small portable heater, refuse to leave the bench for more than the briefest moments. Maria would bring him thermal underwear, hot soup, anything to keep him warm, and sustained community support evolved. What had begun as casual concern transformed into active participation. People would bring Pedro information, share potential sightings, keep him connected to any possible lead. The bus stop became more than a location. It became a symbol of parental love, of hope that refused to die. Each bus that arrived, each passenger that disembarked, carried the potential of reunion. Marcos's digital investigation revealed layers of complexity. The network responsible for Elena's disappearance was sophisticated, carefully constructed. It wasn't a simple kidnapping, it was something far more intricate. Maria continued to support Pedro, even as their other children needed her. She became a bridge between hope and practical survival. Her administrative skills, her ability to manage complex situations, became crucial to the family's survival. As another year passed, Pedro's vigil remained unbroken. He had become a local legend, a testament to the extraordinary power of parental love. The bus stop was no longer just a place of waiting, it was a declaration of hope. Little did Pedro know that Elena's story was about to take a turn that would challenge everything they had believed. The truth was closer than anyone could have imagined, waiting to emerge from the shadows of uncertainty. The unexpected connection arrived on a cold November morning, when the world seemed to pause between breaths. Marcos Martinez had been tracking digital breadcrumbs for months. His computer, a labyrinth of encrypted messages, hidden networks, and carefully constructed digital trails. His breakthrough came from an unlikely source, seemingly innocuous online forum frequented by computer enthusiasts. Buried deep within layers of coded communication, he found a pattern that didn't quite fit. Small fragments of information that, when carefully assembled, suggested something extraordinary about Elena's disappearance. Officer Ramirez had long since learned to trust Marcos's digital investigative skills. The young man had become an unofficial partner in the investigation, his technical expertise complementing the traditional police work. What they discovered was far more complex than a simple kidnapping. The digital trail suggested a sophisticated network operating with surgical precision. Alina hadn't been randomly targeted, she had been carefully selected, her online interactions meticulously analyzed and manipulated. Someone had been studying her, understanding her digital footprint with an almost scientific approach. Maria discovered the first physical evidence that corroborated Marcus's digital investigation. A small notebook, hidden in Elena's bedroom, contained cryptic notes. Drawings that seemed nonsensical at first glance began to reveal a pattern when examined closely. Coordinates, partial messages, subtle references that hinted at something larger. Pedro's continuous vigil at the bus stop took on new meaning. What had seemed like pure desperation now appeared to be something more instinctive. Understanding that Elena's return would happen in a way no one expected, the family's support network grew stronger. Local community members who had initially viewed Pedro's continuous waiting with pity now saw it as a form of extraordinary hope. Small businesses began to support their search, offering resources, sharing information. Marcus's investigation revealed layers of complexity that challenged everything they thought they knew. The digital network responsible for Elena's disappearance was international in scope. Traces led to multiple countries, sophisticated communication systems that seemed to operate beyond traditional criminal networks. Officer Ramirez brought in specialized federal investigators. What had begun as a local missing persons case was transforming into something far more significant. The white van, the encrypted messages, Elena's carefully constructed online presence, everything suggested a level of planning that went beyond typical criminal behavior. Maria's administrative skills became crucial. She began mapping the digital and physical evidence, creating complex charts that revealed subtle connections. Her ability to see patterns, to organize seemingly random information, became a powerful investigative tool. Scientific experts became involved. Digital forensics specialists from Mexico City were brought in, analyzing the encrypted messages, the subtle digital breadcrumbs that Marcos had discovered. What they found challenged traditional understanding of online communication and criminal networks. Pedro's intuition proved remarkable. His continuous presence at the bus stop, his absolute belief in Elena's return, seemed to be more than simple parental hope. He had an almost supernatural sense of certainty that defied logical explanation. The Martinez family became an unexpected team of investigators. Marcos with his digital skills, Maria with her administrative precision, Pedro with his intuitive understanding. Each brought a unique perspective to understanding Elena's disappearance. Local and federal authorities began to take the case more seriously. The sophistication of the digital network, the careful planning behind Elena's removal, suggested something far more complex than a typical kidnapping. International law enforcement began to collaborate, sharing information across borders. Sofia, now approaching 10, became an unexpected source of insight. Children often see things adults miss. Her drawings, her occasional comments, provided subtle clues that complemented the more technical investigation. The white van, a ghost that had haunted the investigation, began to take shape. Digital reconstruction, witness statements, subtle traces of its movements created a more comprehensive picture. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was part of a carefully constructed network. Marcus's most significant discovery came late one night. Buried deep in encrypted communications, he found a series of messages that suggested Elena wasn't simply a victim. Something about her interactions suggested a level of involvement that defied traditional understanding of kidnapping. Officer Ramirez recognized the complexity of the investigation. This wasn't a simple case of finding a missing child. This was unraveling a sophisticated network that operated in shadows, manipulating digital and physical realities with extraordinary precision. The Martinez family stood at the intersection of hope and investigation. Their personal tragedy had transformed into something larger, potential exposure of a complex criminal network that operated beyond traditional understanding. Pedro's continuous vigil at the bus stop took on new meaning. What had seemed like pure desperation now appeared to be something more intuitive. Understanding that Elena's return would happen in a way no one could predict. As another layer of the mystery was revealed, the Martinez family understood one thing clearly: Elena's story was far from over. The truth was waiting to emerge, a complex narrative of survival, manipulation, and extraordinary human resilience. Little did they know that the next chapter of their journey was about to begin. Revelation that would challenge everything they believed about loss, hope, and the extraordinary lengths of human connection. The darkest moment arrived with a silence more profound than any sound. 2 years had passed since Elena's disappearance, and the Martinez family stood at the precipice of total despair. Pedro's vigil at the bus stop had become a local legend, a testament to parental love or a symbol of unresolved grief, depending on who was telling the story. His body had transformed, weathered by continuous exposure. His mechanic's hands now rough and cracked from years of waiting and searching. Maria's single quotes as administrative precision began to crack. Her meticulously maintained files, the countless folders, Documenting Elena's disappearance started to feel like a memorial rather than an active investigation. She would spend hours staring at the same photographs, the same pieces of evidence, searching for anything she might have missed. Marcus's digital investigation had reached a point of diminishing returns. The encrypted messages, once a source of hope, now felt like a labyrinth with no exit. He had sacrificed his own future, dropping out of college to continue the search, his technical skills becoming both a blessing and a curse. Sophia, now approaching 11, began to understand the weight of loss in ways a child should never have to comprehend. Her drawings became darker, more complex. Where once she drew hopeful reunions, now she created intricate landscapes of absence, empty rooms, lonely bus stops, shadows that seemed to hold untold stories. The federal investigation had all but disappeared. What had once been an active case was now a file gathering dust in multiple jurisdictions. Officer Ramirez, now close to retirement, continued to follow up when he could. But resources were limited. Community support had long since evaporated. The initial outpouring of hope and assistance had given way to uncomfortable silence. Neighbors would avert their eyes when Pedro passed. The weight of unresolved tragedy, too heavy to acknowledge. Financial pressures became unbearable. The Martinez family had exhausted savings, taken multiple loans, sold personal belongings. Maria's part-time job barely covered basic expenses. Pedro had taken whatever mechanical work he could find, his once steady reputation as a reliable mechanic now overshadowed by his reputation as the father who couldn't let go. Marco discovered something that would change everything, but it came at a moment of absolute despair. His computer, a maze of encrypted files and digital investigations, held a fragment of information that seemed both impossible and terrifying. The white van, the ghost that had haunted their investigation, began to take on a different meaning. Marcus's digital forensics revealed a network far more complex than a simple kidnapping. The van was merely a piece of a much larger puzzle, a transportation node in an international network that operated in shadows. Pedro's mental state reached a breaking point. His continuous vigil at the bus stop had become a form of self-imposed punishment. He spoke less, ate less, his body becoming a physical manifestation of unresolved grief. Maria watched helplessly as the man she loved disappeared into his own pain. International connections began to emerge. The digital trail Marcos had been following suggested a network that operated across borders, human trafficking, but with a sophistication that defied traditional understanding. Elena wasn't just a victim, she was part of a larger, more complex system. Sophia became the unexpected source of hope. Her child's intuition, her ability to see beyond the obvious, provided subtle insights that adults missed. She would draw pictures that seemed nonsensical but held critical clues, coordinates, partial images that suggested something more was happening. Officer Ramirez recognized the complexity of the investigation. This was no longer a simple missing persons case. The network they were uncovering operated with a level of precision that suggested state-level involvement or something far more sinister. Maria's administrative skills transformed into a weapon of investigation. She began connecting dots that seemed unrelated: financial transactions, digital communications, subtle patterns that suggested a network far more complex than anyone had imagined. Marcus's most significant discovery came from an unexpected source. A buried communication, deeply encrypted, suggested that Elena wasn't simply a victim. Her digital interactions suggested a level of involvement that challenged everything they thought they knew about her disappearance. The Martinez family stood at the intersection of hope and total despair. Their personal tragedy had become something larger, a potential exposure of a network that operated beyond traditional understanding of crime and human trafficking. Pedro's continuous vigil at the bus stop became more than a personal mission. It was a declaration of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness. Each day, each hour of waiting became a form of resistance against the possibility of losing hope entirely. As the second anniversary of Elena's disappearance approached, the Martinez family understood one thing clearly: the truth was waiting to emerge. A complex narrative of survival, manipulation, and extraordinary human resilience was about to unfold. Little did they know that the next chapter of their journey would challenge everything they believed about loss, hope, and the extraordinary lengths of human connection. The darkest moment was about to give way to something none of them could have anticipated. Renewal came not with a thunderous revelation, but with a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. Marcos Martinez's relentless digital investigation had transformed from desperate searching to a calculated, methodical pursuit of truth. The breakthrough arrived through an unexpected connection. A former classmate of Elena's, now working in international digital security, reached out with a fragment of information that would change everything. Hidden within layers of encrypted communication was a series of coordinates, digital breadcrumbs that suggested Elena was not just a victim, but a potential key to something much larger. Pedro's continuous vigil at the bus stop took on new meaning. What had seemed like pure desperation now appeared to be an intuitive understanding that Elena's return would happen in a way no one could predict. Maria watched her husband with a mixture of concern and renewed hope. Recognizing that his unwavering belief was more than simple grief, it was a form of active hope that defied logical explanation. Federal investigators began to take the Martinez family's investigation seriously. The digital network Marcos had been tracking was far more complex than a simple missing persons case. It suggested an international operation that operated in shadows, manipulating digital and physical realities with extraordinary precision. Officer Ramirez, now consulting on the case, brought in specialized resources. His decades of experience told him that the Martinez family was onto something significant. The white van, the encrypted messages, Elena's carefully constructed digital presence, everything suggested a level of planning that went beyond traditional criminal networks. Maria's administrative skills became their most powerful weapon, began mapping the increasingly complex web of information, financial transactions, digital communications, subtle patterns that suggested a network operating across international borders. Her ability to see connections where others saw chaos became crucial to their investigation. Marcos discovered a series of encrypted messages that suggested Elena wasn't simply a victim. Her digital interactions hinted at a level of involvement that challenged everything they thought they knew about her disappearance. It was as if she had been playing a role in a much larger system. Sofia, now approaching 12, became an unexpected source of insight. Her drawings, once filled with childlike hope, now contained subtle, sophisticated details. Coordinates, partial, images of locations, hints that suggested she understood more than anyone realized. The Martinez family transformed their approach. No longer passive victims, they became active investigators. Pedro's mechanical skills, Maria's administrative precision, Marcus's digital expertise, and Sofia's intuitive understanding created a unique investigative team. International connections began to emerge. The digital trail suggested a network that operated across multiple countries, with a sophistication that suggested state-level involvement or something far more complex. Human trafficking seemed too simple an explanation for what they were uncovering. Scientific experts became involved. Digital forensic specialists from Mexico City and international agencies began to take the Martinez family's investigation seriously. The level of digital manipulation, the careful construction of Elena's online presence, suggested something far beyond a typical missing persons case. Pedro's continuous presence at the bus stop became a strategic decision. What had seemed like pure desperation was now a carefully considered approach. He was creating a visible, constant presence that challenged whoever was responsible for Elena's disappearance. Marcus's most significant discovery came from an unexpected source. A buried communication suggested that Elena had been gathering information, that her disappearance might be part of a much larger operation. She wasn't just a victim, she was potentially an active participant in something much more complex. The family's support network began to rebuild. Local community members who had previously distanced themselves now recognized the Martinez family's determination. Small businesses, local professionals, began to offer support in subtle but meaningful ways. Maria discovered physical evidence that complemented Marcus's digital investigation. A series of notebooks, carefully hidden, contained coded information that suggested Elena had been preparing for something. Coordinates, partial messages, hints of a larger plan. Officer Ramirez brought in international contacts. The network they were uncovering operated with a level of precision that suggested something far more significant than a simple criminal operation. It was a system that manipulated digital and physical realities with extraordinary sophistication. Intuition proved remarkable. Her seemingly random drawings contained critical information, coordinates that matched locations in Marcus's digital investigation, partial images that suggested a larger narrative was unfolding. The Martinez family stood at the intersection of hope and potential revelation. Their personal tragedy had transformed into a potential exposure of a network that operated beyond traditional understanding of crime and human connection. Pedro's vigil at the bus stop took on new meaning. Each day of waiting was now a calculated approach, a way of challenging the network responsible for Elena's disappearance. His continuous presence was a declaration of hope, a challenge to those who thought they could make a child disappear. As they approached the 3rd anniversary of Elena's disappearance, the Martinez family understood one thing clearly: the truth was waiting to emerge. A complex narrative of survival, manipulation, and extraordinary human resilience was about to unfold. Little did they know that the next chapter of their journey would challenge everything they believed about loss, hope, and the extraordinary lengths of human connection. Renewal was coming in a way none of them could have anticipated. The first tangible hint arrived on a morning that seemed unremarkable. Marcos Martinez's computer screen flickered with a series of decoded messages that would change everything the Martinez family thought they knew about Elena's disappearance. International digital forensics experts had been quietly assisting Marcos, drawn by the complexity of the encrypted communications. What they discovered was far beyond a simple missing persons case. Elena had been part of something much larger, sophisticated network that operated in the shadows of digital and physical realities. Pedro's continuous vigil at the bus stop took on new significance. His mechanical intuition, honed through years of understanding complex systems, began to see patterns that defied traditional investigation. Maria watched her husband with a mixture of hope and careful skepticism, recognizing that something fundamental was about to change. The decoded messages suggested Elena wasn't a victim in the traditional sense. Her digital footprint revealed a carefully constructed narrative of someone gathering information, navigating a complex network with a level of sophistication that belied her young age. She had been collecting data, creating a trail that was both deliberate and carefully masked. Officer Ramirez brought in specialized international investigators. The network they were uncovering operated with a precision that suggested state-level involvement or something far more complex. Human trafficking seemed too simple an explanation for the intricate digital and physical trail Elena had left behind. Marcus's investigation revealed layers of communication that challenged everything they understood about Elena's disappearance. Encrypted messages, carefully constructed digital identities, subtle communications that suggested Elena was an active participant in something much larger than a simple kidnapping. Maria's administrative skills became crucial. She began mapping the increasingly complex web of information, financial transactions, digital communications, subtle patterns that suggested a network operating across international borders. Her ability to see connections where others saw chaos became their most powerful investigative tool. Sofia, now approaching 13, provided unexpected insights. Her drawings, once viewed as childlike expressions of hope, now contained sophisticated details, coordinates, partial images of locations, hints that suggested she understood more about Elena's disappearance than anyone realized. The Martinez family's approach transformed. No longer passive victims, they became active investigators. Pedro's mechanical understanding, Maria's administrative precision, Marcus's digital expertise, and Sofia's intuitive insights created a unique investigative team that defied traditional investigative methods. Scientific experts from multiple countries became involved. Digital forensics specialists, international law enforcement, began to take the Martinez family's investigation seriously. The level of digital manipulation, the careful construction of Elena's online presence, suggested something far beyond a typical missing persons case. Pedro's continuous presence at the bus stop became a strategic approach. What had seemed like pure desperation was now a carefully considered method of challenging whoever was responsible for Elena's disappearance. His mechanical mind saw the bus stop as more than a location, it was a point of potential intersection. Marcos discovered communications that suggested Elena had been gathering information about a network that operated in the shadows of international systems. Her digital interactions hinted at a level of involvement that challenged everything they thought they knew about her disappearance. The family's support network began to expand. International digital rights organizations, human rights, investigators began to take interest in the Martinez family's unique approach to investigation. What had begun as a local missing persons case was transforming into something much larger. Maria uncovered physical evidence that complemented Marcus's digital investigation. A series of notebooks, carefully hidden, contained coded information that suggests that Elena had been preparing for something significant. Coordinates, partial messages, hints of a larger plan that extended far beyond a simple disappearance. Officer Ramirez's international contacts provided crucial insights. The network they were uncovering operated with a level of precision that suggested a sophisticated operation targeting specific individuals. Elena was not a random victim. She had been carefully selected for something. Sofia's intuition proved remarkably accurate. Her drawings contained critical information that aligned with Marcus's digital investigations. Coordinates that matched locations, partial images that suggested a larger narrative was unfolding. The Martinez family stood at the intersection of hope and potential revelation. Their personal tragedy had transformed into a potential exposure of a network that operated beyond traditional understanding of crime and human connection. Pedro's vigil at the bus stop became more than a personal mission. Each day of waiting was a calculated approach, a way of challenging the network responsible for Elena's disappearance. His continuous presence was a declaration of hope, a challenge to those who thought they could make a child disappear. As they approached the critical moment of their investigation, the Martinez family understood one thing clearly. The truth was waiting to emerge. A complex narrative of survival, manipulation, and extraordinary human resilience was about to unfold. Little did they know that the next chapter of their journey would challenge everything they believed about loss, hope, and the extraordinary lengths of human connection. The first hint was just the beginning of a revelation that would change everything. The reunion was nothing like anyone had imagined. Elena Martinez stood before her family, no longer a child, but a young woman transformed by an extraordinary journey that defied understanding. Her return brought a complexity of emotions that words could barely contain. Pedro, who had waited at the bus stop for countless days, found himself unable to speak. Maria's administrative precision crumbled in the face of pure maternal emotion. Marcos approached with a mixture of scientific curiosity and brotherly love. Sofia, now a teenager, saw her sister not as a lost child, but as someone who had survived something profound. International investigators continued to work closely with the Martinez family. Elena's journey had exposed a network of digital manipulation and human trafficking that extended far beyond their initial understanding. She had been both a victim and an unexpected hero, a young woman who had gathered critical information that would ultimately dismantle a sophisticated international operation. The psychological evaluation revealed layers of complexity. Elena had been strategically placed within a network that operated in the shadows of digital and physical realities. Her disappearance was not a random act, but a carefully constructed mission that had required extraordinary resilience and intelligence. Pedro's mechanical mind sought to understand the technical details. How had Elena survived? How had she managed to gather such critical information? His approach was methodical, breaking down her story into components that could be understood, analyzed, processed. Maria became her daughter's primary support. Her administrative skills, her ability to organize and process complex information, became crucial in helping Elena navigate her return. They spent hours talking, with Maria listening more than speaking, understanding that Elena's journey was hers to tell. Marcos approached Elena's return from a scientific perspective. He wanted to understand the digital mechanisms that had allowed her to survive, to gather information, to ultimately expose the network responsible for her disappearance. Their conversations became a complex dance of technical analysis and familial reconnectation. Sofia saw her sister as a hero. No longer the little sister waiting for a missing sibling, she now looked up to Elena with a mixture of awe and sisterly love. Their relationship began to transform, becoming something more equal, more complex. International human rights organizations became deeply involved. Elena's story was more than a personal journey. It was a critical exposure of a network that had operated with impunity. Her testimony would become crucial in dismantling systems of digital manipulation and human trafficking. The psychological support team worked carefully with Elena. Her experience was not something that could be easily processed or understood. She had lived through an extraordinary journey that most adults could not comprehend, let alone a young woman who had been taken from her family at such a young age. Officer Ramirez, now retired but still closely involved, became a crucial support. His decades of investigative experience proved invaluable in helping Elena process her journey. He understood the complexity of her experience in ways that younger investigators could not. Elena's digital expertise, developed during her time within the network, became a valuable tool. International cybersecurity firms became interested in her unique perspective. She had survived by understanding systems that most adults could not comprehend. The Martinez family's approach to Elena's return was unique. They did not treat her as a victim to be protected, but as a survivor to be understood. Each family member brought their own approach: Pedro's mechanical precision, Maria's administrative support, Marcos's scientific curiosity, Sofia's unwavering love. Media attention became a complex challenge. Elena's story was extraordinary, but she was determined to control her narrative. International news organizations sought her story, but she was careful about what she shared, understanding the ongoing legal and personal implications. Psychological experts were fascinated by Elena's resilience. How had a young girl survived such an extraordinary journey? How had she managed to gather critical information while maintaining her sense of self? Her story challenged everything understood about human survival. The legal implications of Elena's investigation began to unfold. International courts became involved, using the information she had gathered to dismantle networks of digital manipulation and human trafficking. Her journey was becoming a critical tool in understanding these complex systems. Pedro's continuous waiting at the bus stop, now understood as more than a personal vigil, became a symbol of parental love and resilience. His unwavering belief that Elena would return had been more than hope. It had been a profound understanding that defied traditional logic. Maria's support became crucial in helping Elena her administrative skills, her ability to organize and process complex information, helped create a structure that allowed Elena to process her extraordinary journey. Marcos continued to work with Elena, helping her understand the technical aspects of her survival. Their conversations became a complex dance of sibling love and technical analysis. Sofia's relationship with Elena transformed. No longer just a younger sister waiting for a lost sibling, she now saw Elena as a hero, as someone who had survived something extraordinary. As they approached the first anniversary of Elena's return, the Martinez family understood one thing clearly: their journey was about more than survival. It was about hope, about resilience, about the extraordinary potential of human connection. Little did they know that Elena's story was far from over. Her journey of survival was just beginning, a story that would continue to challenge everything people understood about hope, resilience, and the extraordinary lengths of human potential. The final chapter of the Martinez family's journey was not about ending, but about transformation. Elena's return had changed everything, not just for her family, but for an entire system that had operated in shadows for years. International investigations continued to unravel the complex network Elena had exposed. Her carefully gathered evidence became a crucial tool in dismantling sophisticated systems of digital manipulation and human trafficking. What had begun as a personal tragedy became a global mission of hope and resilience. Pedro Martinez stood at the bus stop no longer as a desperate father waiting, but as a symbol of unwavering hope. The bench that had been his vigil, his home, his sanctuary of belief, now stood as a monument to parental love. Local authorities had considered preserving it as a memorial, a testament to the power of continuous hope. Maria's approach to life had transformed. Her administrative skills, once used for school paperwork, now became a powerful tool in supporting international investigations. She worked closely with human rights organizations, helping other families navigating similar journeys of loss and reunion. Marcos continued to develop digital forensics techniques inspired by Elena's extraordinary survival. His research became groundbreaking, creating new methods of investigating complex digital networks. Universities sought his expertise, recognizing that Elena's journey had opened up entirely new approaches to understanding digital communication. Elena herself became an unexpected advocate. She spoke at international conferences, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had transformed her experience into a mission of hope. Her testimony became crucial in understanding the complex networks that operate in the shadows of digital and physical realities. Sophia, now approaching adulthood, found her own path inspired by her sister's journey. She began studying international law, determined to create systems that could protect vulnerable individuals from the kinds of networks Elena had exposed. Officer Ramirez, though retired, remained a crucial support. His decades of investigative experience provided context and support to Elena's ongoing work. He had become more than a former investigator. He was a mentor, a supporter, a bridge between her past and her future. The Martinez family's approach to healing was unique. They did not try to forget or move past their experience. Instead, they transformed it. Each family member found a way to turn their pain into purpose, their loss into a mission of hope. International cybersecurity firms became deeply interested in Elena's unique perspective. She had survived by understanding systems that most adults could not comprehend. Her insights became crucial in developing new approaches to digital security and human protection. Pedro's mechanical skills found new purpose. He began working with technical teams, using his understanding of complex systems to support investigations. His ability to see patterns, to understand intricate connections, became a valuable tool in understanding digital networks. Maria developed support groups for families of missing persons. Her administrative skills, her ability to organize and provide structure, became a lifeline for others navigating similar journeys of loss and hope. Marcos continued to push the boundaries of digital forensics. Elena's journey had shown him that technology was not just about data, but about human potential. His research became a bridge between technical investigation and human understanding. Elena's psychological journey was ongoing. She worked with support teams, international advocates, continuing to process her extraordinary experience. But she was no longer defined by her past. She was creating her future. The bus stop where Pedro had waited became a local landmark. Tourists, investigators, families seeking hope would visit, understanding that it represented something more than a physical location. It was a symbol of unwavering love, of hope that refused to die. International legal systems began to change. Because of Elena's testimony, new laws were developed to protect individuals from the kinds of networks she had exposed. Her journey became a catalyst for systemic change. Sophia's studies in international law became a continuation of her family's mission. She saw her path not as a career, but as a courageous way to create systems that could protect vulnerable individuals. Martinez family had transformed their personal tragedy into a global mission of hope. They had shown that love could survive the most extraordinary circumstances. That hope was not just an emotion, but a powerful force of transformation. Continuous waiting at the bus stop had been more than a personal vigil. It had been a declaration of hope, a challenge to those who thought they could break a family's spirit. His unwavering belief had been proven true. As they approached the anniversary of Elena's return, the Martinez family understood one thing. Clearly, their journey was about more than survival. It was about the extraordinary potential of human connection, of love that refuses to be broken. The bus stop stood as a testament to their journey, a simple bench that had become a symbol of hope, of love that knows no boundaries. A reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest of beliefs, that hope can survive anything. Little did they know that their story was far from over. It was just beginning, a continuing symphony of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary lengths of human potential.